With the introduction of skill-based matchmaking and MMR, Dead by Daylight had changed forever, moving away from its old emblem system into a new age of skill-based matchmaking. But was it for the better or the worse? There's been long ongoing debates on if Dead by Daylight should use skill-based matchmaking, if it's healthy for the game, and even if Dead by Daylight itself is a competitive or casual game. But all of this still raises a lot of questions, and with recent changes to the skill-based matchmaking system, even more questions are flooding in. But we need to start at the top. What exactly is skill-based matchmaking? To make it short and sweet, skill-based matchmaking is a form of matchmaking that is dependent on the relative skill of the player involved. In Dead by Daylight, the skill-based matchmaking rating uses a hidden score that is influenced by the player's performance through the trials. There's no way that a player themselves can see their specific score, and this rating is shared across all survivors, but it's individual for every killer. Now, skill-based matchmaking itself was introduced on September 8th of 2021, and a small note that we'll touch on a little bit later, from that point to now, Dead by Daylight has never had that high of an average player count to this day. It has constantly dropped down, but that's something we'll talk about a little bit later. Before this, for the previous years, we had something called the emblem system. This emblem system used 4 different scoring events, and based on how well you did in each would determine your score, giving you a rank. This is where you actually had a ranked based on a number. If you were red, you were in 1 to 4. If you were purple, you were 5 to 8, and so on and so forth. However, this was changed because it didn't really feel like a true test of skill. Essentially, if you played a lot of the game, you would more than likely make it to red rank, leading to some lopsided games and some outliers that just didn't feel too good. This meant that the ranks that were somewhat inaccurate determined what lobbies you were getting and your matchmaking overall. This is also part of the reason why people confuse the ranking system today with the iridescent, the ash, with the old ranking system, because they oftentimes get into lobbies where they might see people in iridescent thinking that they're actually rank 1. So this emblem system was scrapped and we moved on to skill-based matchmaking, but this brought about a lot of different issues that we'll jump on into after this nice little ad break from today's sponsored FlexiSpot. Now, FlexiSpot has given me a brand new awesome standing desk. I mean, take a look at this. This is absolutely amazing. I couldn't be more thankful to them. This is fantastic. It is a sleek wooden black desk. It is a giant L desk with tons of space, and most importantly, the cherry on top is that it is a standing desk. It goes up and down to some awesome heights, and I mean, this is so wonderful. I've been wanting a standing desk for such a long time. Now, if you're looking for a new desk, now is the perfect time to do so and take advantage of FlexiSpot's Amazon Black Friday and Cyber Monday sale for up to 70% off. Not only that, but they're going to be doing some free orders from the 24th to the 27th. Essentially, some random lucky winners are going to have an opportunity to get reimbursed on their entire order. Make sure you guys are also following and watching FlexiSpot's live stream on Amazon. These are super cost-effective, fantastic desks. I couldn't be happier. And again, a big thank you to FlexiSpot for this amazing standing desk. I'm sure you guys will love it too. Link in the description. So again, a big thank you to FlexiSpot for the amazing gift, and let's go ahead and talk some more about skill-based matchmaking. How does skill-based matchmaking actually work in Dead by Daylight? Every player is given a specific score. Let's put this on a scale from 0 to 5,000 and say you're in the middle at 2,500. This score is graded on your performance throughout the trials, whether you're a survivor or killer. Keep in mind that all survivors, no matter who you play, will have a standard skill-based matchmaking rating, while the killers that you play will have individual rankings. So one rating on your trapper can be different from a rating on your nurse. While there are some other contributing factors, Dead by Daylight makes this pretty simple. If you manage to get a 4K and you do quite well, your MMR rating will go up. If you do poorly and you don't get any kills, your MMR rating will go down. The same on the survivor side. If you manage to escape, your MMR rating will go up. However, if you end up dying in your trial, your MMR will go down. As you can see, that's not necessarily a great way of giving an accurate score, because there's a lot more that goes into the match than just killing survivors or escaping a trial. For example, you could literally do nothing the entire game as a survivor, end up escaping, and that means that your MMR goes up, whereas another teammate might loop the killer for 5 gens only to be struck down by Noed at the exit gate, and they end up dying, so their MMR goes down. It's not really that black and white, and there's a lot of other factors that should be taken into place. Now, we don't actually know what fully goes into ranking this. However, from a lot of previous dev streams, it seems that they kind of made this black and white for a very long time. Now, in the case of lobbies, the way that this works is the killer will have your average rating. Let's go back to that nice 2500 rating that you have. The average of all the survivors will be calculated that are queued up, and they will try to accurately give you someone that's in your range. So for example, if you're at 2500, you might get some survivors that are at 2700 and some survivors that are at 2200 in order to give you that nice balance. They also need to take into consideration different regions, different servers, who's in, let's say, the East Coast, who's playing at an accurate time. All these things need to contribute in order to give you a smooth matchmaking experience, all the while doing this in a timely fashion. Hence why if someone ends up leaving the lobby when they automatically get put into one, the game decides to autofill it with anybody that's in that region in order to ensure that that lobby goes through, which can lead to some more lopsided games. So for example, if 4 survivors queue up, one of them decides to leave, and you're all at a 2500 average rating, you might end up with someone with a 1500 rating just because they're in the same region. Keep in mind as well that there are caps for both sides of these equations as well. For example, if you're brand new to the game and your MMR, let's say it's 0, you won't automatically go into a lobby with a 2500 person. This will be capped at a certain point, and you would have to pass that threshold in order to get into these other lobbies. The same can be said on the other side. If you are an extremely good player, and let's say your MMR is 5000 all the way at the top, there's no chance you'll ever be queued with anybody lower than, let's say, a 4500. You'll only find the same consistent lobbies. This is a way to ensure that the outliers on both sides are still being accurately matched with people of their equivalent skill level. So on paper, this sounds quite nice. It seems that there's a lot of benefits to skill-based matchmaking. The people that are brand new to the game will play people that are brand new to the game. The people that are really experienced will always play players that are very experienced. And if you lie in the middle, you can sometimes get a nice healthy mix, sometimes getting really good people, or sometimes getting games where it's a little bit more lopsided. Overall, this is a pretty good system, and it's worked in some other games. This is made to make the matches feel more evenly paced, and you have less blowouts when it comes. But as I mentioned, this has worked for other games, not necessarily Dead by Daylight. You see, there's a few issues that skill-based matchmaking actually brings into the game. One of those big ones is how sweaty people get. No matter what, you're always going to be playing against players that are matched at your skill rating, meaning that if you're at the top of the food chain, you will consistently face players that are always sweating it out, trying to get that competitive edge over you. If you're all the way at the bottom and something has clicked and you're constantly getting 4Ks, unfortunately, you will be stuck in that little loop of constantly playing with newer players. I made a brand new account recently where I played Nurse to try to get to Ash to Eerie in one day, and I 4K'd every single game, getting up to Iridescent. This took me about 10 hours in total to do. However, I was still playing against players that had barely touched the surface of Dead by Daylight with less than 5 hours on record, even though I was 4K'ing every single game leading up to that point. And that's not an exaggeration. I really was 4K'ing everybody because I just went ahead and played some Nurse. So that in itself can lead to some pretty big issues with the game. One of the biggest issues that people also have with the skill-based matchmaking is that if you previously played very well, or you're naturally just pretty good at the game, you end up getting into lobbies that are ultra sweaty. This happens to me quite often on stream. I play very casually on stream. I just talk to my chat, and because of my previous wins that I have, I'm constantly getting into lobbies where games go by so quickly because my skill-based matchmaking is quite high. So the games either go really quick where all the survivors pop the gens and I have nothing to do and I can barely get a hook, or on the flip side, my killers are just way too sweaty. I'm getting Nurses and Blights every single game, and that's pretty much just the GG for me. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You can easily just go ahead and lose some games and you'll get a better match because your rating will go down. Unfortunately, as I mentioned prior, that's not essentially how it works. In the case where I got 4Ks every single game, I was still at the same MMR, and in this case where I've been constantly getting dominated in games, I'm still yet in the same MMR. This is something that doesn't necessarily shift that often and also leads to a lot of placebo thinking. But the issues with skill-based matchmaking are not as black and white as my games are too sweaty and I just want to chill what's going on, and then the opposite side arguing. This is a bigger debate that has been going on for Dead by Daylight for a very, very long time, and that is if Dead by Daylight is casual or competitive. And I feel like even the developers argue about this all the time because of the things that they say and the changes that they make in the game, and they really need to correct it and make a full-on stance with this if they want to continue to make skill-based matchmaking good in Dead by Daylight, which again we'll talk about in a second. Now, if you think the game is pretty casual and you just want to have some nice relaxed games, then overall, you would typically agree that skill-based matchmaking is not healthy and not good for Dead by Daylight. However, if you are playing competitively, you are trying to win every single match, and you want to face tougher competition, you're more than likely to think that skill-based matchmaking is good and healthy for the game. Now, overall, I'm not here to convince you if Dead by Daylight is competitive or if Dead by Daylight is casual and a party game. That's up to you to decide, and everyone has their own opinion on that. And I think, as I mentioned, the developers themselves don't truly know where they lie on this issue. The fact of the matter is, though, they really do need to take a positive stance on this issue, because if this is going to be a game that you're pushing skill-based matchmaking on, which kind of edges to the more competitive side, then you really need to step it up when it comes to balancing. There should be no reason that something like the spinning top gets nerfed on the twins, but something like the alchemist ring is left on Blight, one of the strongest killers in the game. If this is truly their stance, they need to make sure that these strong killers get some nerfs and there's a nice pool and variety of different killers to play, because if you are forcefully putting skill-based matchmaking into the game and you want it to be competitive, there needs to be a wide array of choices to have different variations instead of a meta that defines the entire game and makes it boring for everybody to play. I often compare Dead by Daylight to Apex Legends because when I went to Behavior and the studios, I spoke to a lot of developers and they told me that they get a lot of inspiration from the game. Take a look at Apex. Recently, they had a character named Seer. Seer was at the top, compare it to the nurse if you may, and now he is the least picked character in the game because they realized that he was pretty unhealthy and they just decided to nerf him. Other characters in the game, especially some of the OGs, are still some of the most top picked at the different ranks, and we can clearly see that they're not afraid to make big changes when it comes down to some of these competitive things. If something is unhealthy and unbalanced, they quickly strike the hammer down and then they make corrective actions after. And that's something that Dead by Daylight has struggled to do for a very long time. We've had slow patches that eventually changed certain things that were strong in the sense of nurse changes, giving her a little bit of a cooldown, maybe spirit changes in some of her add-ons, and Hillbilly unnecessarily getting some overheat mechanics, but overall there's still some dominating things that you see every single game that have not been tackled or addressed since day one. We also see things that actually require skill slowly being removed, like burning the nurse with a flashlight or the Wraith. You can even go as far as saying locker saves, which had its own problems because there wasn't counterplay, but similarly so, these are things that require skill. We've seen that flashlights got made a lot easier to be used as well, so it seems that they're really kind of lowering that skill aspect of things while still leaving a bunch of other things untouched, showing that, again, they truly don't know if this is a casual or competitive game. Do they want to appeal to the new players and make it casual and just fun for them? Or are they trying to make this a competitive game where you can play and, really sweat it out every single game? Not to mention the constant RNG that goes into these maps that makes it so much more difficult to be a competitive game itself because there's so many different factors that can define a game. For example, if you're playing a certain killer, you might get on a map that is absolutely terrible for you. Or you can play another match on a different variation of that same exact map and dominate because of the RNG tiles. There's things like dead zones that happen on certain maps, and these are all different factors that play into it. So again, point being, this is a really gray area, but there is some solutions that they could introduce into the game to make it a little bit better for everybody. Now, before you say we don't even need a solution, this is fine, and you're taking your stance, I want to point out one thing for you guys. As I mentioned earlier, skill-based matchmaking was introduced on September 8th of 2021. What also happened at this time? If you take a look at the Steam charts, this was also one of the highest averaging months that Dead by Daylight has ever had, at a whopping 51,000 average. There were some other peak months, but you can give that to some of the DLCs. From that point on, of when skill-based matchmaking was introduced on September 8th of 2021 to this day, we have not seen an average that has been that high in the game whatsoever. Now, of course, there's other factors that play into this, but arguably, when we're getting chapters such as Alien and Chucky, two of the biggest licenses that we've ever seen in the game, and the average is still suffering in comparison to what we had back then, you can kind of start pointing some fingers on what exactly caused this issue. Now, what exactly would be the solution for this? Well, we know that Dead by Daylight are slowly trying to introduce new game modes into the game. It is confirmed that they're prototyping some other game modes, and their counterpart Dead by Daylight Mobile has introduced a prop hunt mode into the game. So with that being said, the way they introduce new game modes can really determine how skill-based matchmaking will work in the future. I'll elaborate. If they introduce new game modes and they introduce them as limited time game modes for the public to play, this will essentially split the player base, meaning that a lot of people will go ahead and play this for a set amount of time. It'll slowly start to fade away, and maybe they'll retire it into a custom game or save it for another seasonal round. Now, that being said, if this is truly what they want to do and split up that player base, I see no reason why at this point in time they can't introduce a casual versus ranked mode. That way, the people that want to casually play Dead by Daylight and just have a good time can go ahead and do that. In those games, balancing shouldn't matter that much, and MMR should be turned off. We shouldn't have skill-based matchmaking, and you can play those old school games where sometimes you get into a lobby, you do really good, maybe you play 3-4 matches that are really good, and then you get absolutely dominated, but hey, that's part of the fun, rather than either always getting lobbies that are really easy for you, or either getting lobbies that are ultra sweaty every single time you play, pushing you away from playing the game itself. And then in the ranked mode, you can have something similarly to Apex, as I mentioned, or keep the current ranking system that as you progressively get better and your MMR goes up, you'll be facing tougher and tougher lobbies, and then your rank will actually be something to brag about. You can showcase it, put it on your profile, incorporate it on these new player portraits that we're going to be receiving in the game, and banners to be like, hey, listen, I made it to this. This is something I want to flex. I see no reason why a casual versus competitive mode can't come into the game if they're working on new game modes and they're going to incorporate them and split the player base as is. To me, it makes sense, and people that want to be sweaty and competitive can play, and people that want to be casual can play as well. Again, as I said, I'm not here to change your opinion or your mind on if Dead by Daylight is casual or competitive, and I think the devs, as I mentioned, don't even know where they lie in this issue, so this is a nice, good solution that they can incorporate to really make things stand out. That combined with good changes to some of the killers that need them and good changes on the survivor sides for some of the things that are more crutch and relied on that constantly reoccur in every single game will go quite a long way. Having more variety in everything that is chosen from perks, killers, survivors, add-ons, whatever the case may be, will be so much more healthy for the game, and people will actually have a lot of fun and enjoy it. With that being said, as I mentioned, MMR has defined the game of Dead by Daylight. Skill-based matchmaking has changed it, whether for the better or worse, you tell me, but the player base has definitely went down on average, and this is a direct correlation to this with other factors, of course. Let me know what you guys think about skill-based matchmaking in Dead by Daylight. Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you think it's fair? Do you think it's not fair? I'm very curious to hear your opinions. A big thank you again to FlexiSpot for sponsoring today's video. Enjoy your Thanksgiving, everybody, if you do celebrate it today. And as always, I'm the King. I tip my crown to you guys, and we'll see you in the fog.